Make sure you hire people who care about the issues, who are really have the same sort of, I guess, in sync with you in terms of what it is that you want to achieve. Mm-hmm. Give them space to create and allow them to take risks.
Welcome back, everybody. Rich Brubaker here with Lisa Genasci from ADM Capital Foundation. We're here to talk about working between nonprofits, finance, to work on the biggest problems that I think the Asia region is facing.
So my name's Lisa Genasci, and I set up ADM Capital Foundation for the partners of ADM Capital, which is an investment manager based in Hong Kong, 10 years ago. The partners wanted to not just be giving in terms of their own philanthropy, but they wanted to set up a foundation that would be impact driven. Okay. So right from the beginning, they wanted to see systemic change in the environmental sector in particular. Initially, we had a strong children at risk program, but we've sort of morphed into the space that we saw for ourselves was more in the environmental sector, because there was less work happening in the environmental sector and obviously a lot of need for change.
And so what are the issues that you initially came in on drove you personally, or that were aligned with the partners?
Yeah, so we started an initiative on shark finning, actually, because 50% of the global shark fin trade was through Hong Kong, and people said that we knew said you can't make change in shark finning. People are going to continue to serve shark fin at weddings. And we supported initially, all of our work begins with research, and we supported cultural trade and market research, which showed actually people weren't necessarily wedded to the consumption of shark fin at weddings. Okay. It was more of a sort of a habit. It was a question of showing face, of affluence, of showing affluence. And that's not so difficult to change once people understand the consequences of their consumption. Okay. So it became an issue of consumption and how to change behavior.
So you did the research, you identified this about consumption, then how did you take that forward, and what impact are you able to look back on and go, hey, we had this much impact, or we did this much?
So in that case, we supported the research. We brought together NGOs working in the sector. Obviously, everybody has their own strategy, so it's not a matter of NGOs always necessarily working in the same way. Everybody has their place, which is fantastic, but we all work to the biodiversity message. So the biodiversity consequences of overconsumption, that was a main message in Hong Kong, which is a bit different than the message in China, which was much more around cruelty. So with NGOs, we established targeted campaigns focused on hotels, which is where there was obviously a lot of consumption of shark fin at wedding banquets, and the other focus was companies for the official banquets. And then, of course, government for government events. And fast forward many years later, we've ended up with about 150 companies signed up to a WWF corporate pledge not to consume shark fin. And then in terms of hotels, most of the 4- and 5-star hotels, well, 62% of 4- and 5-star hotels, and actually it's more now, have taken shark fin soup off their menu or serve it only upon request.
And how long did it take? How long has this been going on then? When did you do the research, and then how long has it taken for this 30% reduction following on?
I guess we started to see, I have to check the figures, but we started to see the reduction in about 2012, 2013, I'd say, and we started in 2006.
And I mean, you have a lot of issues that you work with, from forestry, fishery, obviously air pollution. How do you figure out what issues you're going to work with, and why not just stick with one? Like, how do you make those decisions as a group, and then how do you maintain a 10, 12-year commitment, I'm sure, of money and of human capital to each of these issues?
So we have really programs across 5 areas now. So air quality, forestry conservation finance, water in China, a seafood initiative, and the wildlife trade. But in each of these areas, really, we've evolved slowly, I would say. So as one issue we've seen uptick in sort of interest or action or results, then we've been able to move to develop that issue and go deeper into another aspect of it. Okay. We've set up teams around each of these areas. China water risk is a good example, where they could take forward those issues for us. So where we don't see that NGOs are already engaged, we've been willing to step in and create initiatives, sort of ADMCF initiatives that can, and taken the issue in-house, and they have run with that issue. So it's not as though ADMCF is sort of going deep in each one of these areas. We've set up teams to go deep in each one of these areas.
But how, like from the outset, how do you actually pick the issue? How do you know if you're looking at 10 things that you should go forward with this one? What's the criteria that you try to layer in so you can understand? Now is the time.
Yeah, well, it has to do with the timing and also a sense that other people aren't working in that space. So we're not in that to be competitive with others. We're in that to be collaborative, to work with others and to really bring together others where we feel it's the moment. And we have an opportunity to go deep in that particular issue.
So then when you look at these, what are some of the key, and you want to have that mindset, you want it to have a life after your support or after your direct involvement ends. What are some of the things that you do in the beginning to maybe set that up?
Make sure that the support for the initiative, well, first of all, start with research, really have an understanding of what the context is and how we're going to establish that theory of change, I guess. So really understand what the impact is going to be that we want to see, how we're going to address that via research, and then make sure that you have a broad base of collaborators, NGOs, companies, government, whatever is the mix that's going to really help make that change. And then what is the funding source? So it's not just us. So broaden that funding bucket. And what is going to be the source of funding that's going to support that for a long time? And where it's appropriate, then we can step back. Once we feel that something is on its own, we don't need to be in that particular initiative. We can step back and let it take its course.
Speaking of funding, you're the founder of the foundation. They gave you the money to start the foundation. How has your funding changed over time? Is it a continued endowment that you can pull off of and you can only use a certain percentage, that way the capital keeps growing? Or have you actually developed a business model so that you're selling reports, you're selling service? And how has that evolved over the last 10 years?
The partners absorb all of the core costs of the foundation. And we direct co-funding into partner projects. So that has been our model over the year, and certainly a lot of funders have appreciated that because they feel that their money is supporting whatever the project is. But the reality is that does limit our own growth to a degree. So we are thinking about what are the alternative sources of funding. So the Tropical Landscape Finance Facility we've started, I hope in the future, could potentially generate a source of revenue for the foundation. And then we have a couple of other revenue-driven initiatives that could provide a source of support to the foundation in the future. But all of our information, our research is open source. We believe that it should be open source.
On the funding, if you think now, or maybe things that you've tried in the past, what are the pools of funding that you think are the most aligned to you? And are those the ones that you really need over time? Because sometimes you need a lot of money and you have to make a change of tact and a compromise so you can get that in. What are some of the considerations you have when you're going through that? Because you're creating a business model after years of not having, you have to have the budget, but you don't have to have the business model. So how do you make that work? What are some of the core things that you have to have in place for there to be a great partnership on that?
Yeah, well, I have to say we've been very lucky in that we've had that core source of support from the partners, and we've also been very lucky in that there aren't many other foundations in Hong Kong that provide, in a sense, the same service to other US foundations or local Chinese foundations who are interested in environmental issues, want to get involved, want to see impact. We can deliver on we can deliver on our programs. We can deliver on action in our programs. So they've seen us as very useful. So actually we've been able to set the agenda, which has been really important for us. So we haven't diverged to meet funding. Funding has come to us.
And what's the best kind of funding for you? Is it corporate? Is it foundation? Is it government? Each one has different strings. Each one you can do. What's been the best one, or what's the one that you're most natural to?
Most of the funding, the co-funding, has been from other foundations. Actually, either US or local foundations. And the best collaborations for us have been those where there's obviously a similar mindset, and there's been an understanding, a very clear understanding of, again, impact and what we want to see. So being aligned with our funders in terms of what the results should be has been very important, and we've been lucky.
Great. What are some of the key things that make for a great partnership or a great collaboration?
Being aligned in terms of, I think, the message and what you want to see. Not always how you get there, because everybody has different ways of working. But understanding where you want to get to and understanding what that sort of general message is, I think is extremely important.
What are the issues that you want to take up next? And then how are you going to go about expanding on the organization when you're already talking about budget versus business model?
Yeah, I think we've got enough issues at the moment.
And I mean, is it okay to say it's enough? Or do you, I mean, we've had some conversation about you need to constantly scale. Probably the most abused term in our entire ecosystem. What does scale mean to you in that sense?
Exactly. So I've thought about that a lot, and I've come to the conclusion that no need. I mean, I think we're happy and we can be impactful in the space that we're working in now. I don't feel the need for us to be a huge foundation.
Right.
I would like to build more resources to be able to do more in the work that we do.
In an ideal world, every investment group here would have their own foundation that's in-house support in the same way. If you were speaking to someone who was looking to create a similar model as yourself, what are some of the key things that you would tell that individual when they're talking to the LPs or to the banks about how to create a bit of an autonomous unit that does the exact same work?
Yeah, so I would say it's all about the people. So make sure you hire people who care about the issues, who are really have the same sort of, I guess, in sync with you in terms of what it is that you want to achieve. Give them space to create and allow them to take risk, because you can't make change in this sector without being able to take risk. And I think a lot of foundations forget the need to take risk. That is the beauty of philanthropy, right? We can seed initiatives, we can support research, we can take risk in ways that perhaps private sector capital can't, and we can create change that can magnify by bringing along the private sector afterwards.
Actually, say you can take risks the private sector can't. That's kind of the opposite of what we're trained in this space. So can you give me an example?
Yes. Okay. For example, the Tropical Landscape Finance Facility that we've started. So we got a very generous grant from Convergence, which is a Canadian government-supported entity that supports innovative finance, the development of innovative finance, to build a team that could help us develop Tropical Landscape Finance Facility, which, as I said, is to marry sort of a development agenda to drive a development agenda with private sector capital. So it would be very hard to find a fund manager who would be able to put their own money and time into developing the type of projects that we're developing around Tropical Landscape Finance Facility. Okay. I think we'll be able to show that these transactions are real, and these transactions at scale, these transactions are at scale, will achieve what we want them to achieve, and that they will have financial returns. But we needed the space to be able to build that.
Right now, you're not sure if there will be a financial return, but let's assume that there is. Let's say it's.
No, there will be a financial return. They're being structured as commercial, fully commercial transactions, but they are difficult and they're complex to build, as you can imagine.
If you prove the model, what then do you think is the scalability of that same financial instrument? Because at the end of the day, it's a financial instrument. Do you foresee that you could label this thing and maybe more foundations, more wealth management groups, more banks would get involved and buy this product and then maybe drive your issue forward? Is that a goal, or is it just you just want to get this one project done and show that it can be done the right way?
Well, our first transaction, which is a $70 million transaction in Indonesia, benefits from a 50% USAID guarantee. Okay. So it does allow the private sector a certain comfort. So we believe that maybe in the future other transactions won't need that sort of comfort, that private sector will be more comfortable with this type of transaction that has a very clear environmental and social agenda, as well as the financial return.
It's really interesting, actually. I'm just like, it's almost like you're, in that sense, like you really are just drawing off the financial capacity, like that structuring background of the group itself, marrying it straight into the issues that are important to the foundation.
Yeah.
But I have to be honest, I'm not sure where the line is between the two groups in a sense. Like,
well, on this product, there isn't one. And what's been amazing is also to see BNP Debt Capital Markets team stepping up right behind us. I mean, they are the structure, they're our structuring partner. They are arranging the green bond that will be that is the result of the securitization of the loans, and they are selling that product to private sector, and you know, it's been a fantastic partnership for us, and hopefully, you know, there'll be many other. We've got quite a strong pipeline of products that'll be sort of following behind.
Just last question, following up on that. You mentioned that you liked having that firewall in between, but in this product, it doesn't seem like it exists.
No, you're talking about the core funds. Core
fund, yeah, okay.
And that was how we were established. As, you know, our offices are here, ADM Capital's offices elsewhere.
Okay.
But for this particular product, there is no line. We're working to the same agenda.
And if that one really scales out, and would you say that actually that might be the next, like that's a really ideal way to go forward, is where you can bring the two organizations so close together to actually one product, and you can scale out as long as you can remain autonomous in a sense? Like,
I think it'll be product based. For this product, that works well. And then, as I said, the Kibbers Fund has a very clear environmental and social agenda. At the same time, there's still our core ADM products, which work to obviously ADM Capital's investment principles, but this is a different type of product, and it needed the grant funding in order to be able to lift it off the ground, and it needed the very clear sort of ENS support initially, but hopefully, you know, in future transactions there will be, you know, it'll be easier, and it'll be smoother, I guess.
Last question.
Yeah.
How do you keep yourself focused with so many big issues, and how do you keep yourself so inspired by looking at so many issues that really are, I mean, there's not a lot of happy news some days. How do you keep focused? How do you keep inspired?
Well, I have an amazing team working across all sectors. So it's not me, it's honestly, it's the team.
Yeah.
So you know, they are passionate. They take great ownership in each of the areas in which they're working. None of us could do any of this work without that sort of determination to make change. And I would say I am at heart an optimistic person. So I really do, and I can see the incremental change that we've been able to make. And because the partners of ADM Capital have given us that long time horizon, I can see that we can make change over time. I remain optimistic.